When this episode comes out, it'll be the second week of the new year. So, how's everyone's diets going? If you're looking for some motivation, you might want to go back to last week's episode on the Story Behind the Treadmill, because in this episode, we'll be talking about a certain crunchy, salty, fat-filled food that's hard to resist. Find out the popular origin story of this food and how it's actually just a legend, how it became a favorite snack food and went from banned during World War II to becoming labeled essential, and why you can't eat just one. I'm your host, Emily Prokop, and this is the story behind potato chips. But first, a quick message. Want to know the story behind Podern Family? Podern Family started with a hashtag for indie podcasters. The podcasters who do this for fun and because we're passionate. We're not the big podcast you hear about, most likely. We don't have 10 to 15 people helping us with production. But that doesn't mean the quality and content you're getting isn't as good as any of those shows. Is there an area of interest you like talking to people about? Listen to an indie podcast on that topic. The hosts are incredibly reachable. We're basically clamoring to hear from listeners. We're just as much your fans as you are ours. No matter what you're interested in, Podern Family's got a show for you. Like movies and TV? Check out the Epic Film Guys, the Something Something Cast, the Boxers, or the Countdown Movie and TV Review. Do you like comedy? Check out Everyone Has a Podcast, The One Word Go Show, Afterburn 739, Now That I'm Older, Rick and Paul Heal the World, or Off in the Weeds. How about random trivia and fun facts? Check out The Endless Knot, or The Story Behind. Like comic books and geek culture? Check out Geek Yogurt Podcast or Little Geek Lost. I could go on, and believe me when I say there are a whole lot more where that came from. But you can find all these and more by searching the hashtag #PodernFamily on Twitter. The story many have heard about the origin of potato chips begins in Moon's Lake House restaurant in the popular tourist spot of Saratoga Springs in New York in 1853. One of the cooks, George Crumb, was working in the restaurant's kitchen when a customer ordered the house specialty, Moon's fried potatoes, basically French fries. When the order was brought out, the customer sent them back to the kitchen, saying they were too thick. Crumb remade the dish, this time slicing the potatoes thinner, but again, the customer sent them back. Just a friendly tip from someone who's worked in food service: never get on the bad side of someone handling your food. Crumb was fed up and insulted. Out of spite, he cut the next batch of potatoes paper thin, fried them until they were crispy, and, to make sure the potatoes would be considered completely inedible, he added more salt than he normally would have. But to Crumb's surprise, the customer absolutely loved them, and they became known as Saratoga chips. However, that's just one of the versions of this story. One version credits Crumb's sister, Katie Speck Wicks, and in another version, the finicky customer was railroad tycoon Commodore Cornelius Vanderbilt, and he was credited with the potato chips invention. My husband even told me he heard a version in which the customer was a king. There's even a recipe in William Kitchener's 1822 cookbook, Cook's Oracle, for potato fried slices or shavings, which became popular a few years before Crumb was even born. It was hard to track down a consistent story about the potato chips' origin, and thank goodness for Snopes.com, because even they couldn't decide on a correct version, and the status of Crumb's story is considered legend. In most versions, however, Crumb is credited, and his snack was a success. He was able to open his own restaurant in 1860 called Crumb's House. However, if he in fact was the inventor of the potato chips, he wouldn't have been able to patent his invention. Crumb was of Native American and Free African American descent, and during that time period, people of color were banned from taking out patents. Potato chips were easily mass-produced and became a popular snack, alongside other salty treats like popcorn and pretzels. However, as anyone who has taken home leftover fried food knows, it's tough to keep their freshness. Grocers would scoop potato chips into glass jars, tins, or paper bags for people to take home, But the chips didn't have a long shelf life. Former nurse and lawyer Laura Scooter was a struggling business owner during the Great Depression. She came up with the idea to package chips in bags made of wax paper, which her employees ironed closed. Her method proved successful, and she was able to sell her business for $5 million, which equals about $43 million today. If you ever wondered why you open a bag of potato chips only to find the bag half empty, this isn't a mistake. The extra air in the bag is mostly nitrogen, which helps keep potato chips fresher longer. And the reason for the extra air is to give the chips a cushion to avoid crushing during travel from the factory to the store to your cabinet. Even though many of us try to avoid chips unsuccessfully, there was a time when Americans couldn't have them. When food rations were prevalent during World War II, production of potato chips was stopped, and chips were declared unessential. But U.S. citizens weren't happy about it, especially because many other snacks like sugar and chocolate were also being rationed. Americans protested the ban and won, and chips were once again produced, sold, and eaten. So maybe the idea that potato chips are addictive isn't new after all. Lay's picked up on this addiction as early as the 1960s when they came up with the slogan, "Bet you can't just eat one." In fact, it's not only a clever catchphrase, it's actually been proven scientifically. An Oxford University study revealed that the crunch made while biting into a potato chip is actually what we're addicted to. Our subconscious associates the crunch with freshness, therefore we find it more appetizing. Another reason potato chips may be addictive is that they fall into the category of hyperpalatable, meaning they are loaded with fat, sodium, and carbohydrates, and are engineered to look tasty to our eyes. Our brains taste and see these foods, and it can set off an automatic pleasure response similar to other addictions. But if you ever want to lose your appetite for potato chips, take a look at some of the weird flavors from around the world, including Cajun squirrel in England, red caviar from Russia, and maple mousse in Canada. Though, if any listeners in Germany want to send some paprika-flavored chips my way, I will gladly accept. Information for this episode was sourced from todayifoundout.com, Snopes.com, Tastemade.com, Psychology Today, and the book Fast Food and Junk Food, an Encyclopedia of What We Love to Eat by Andrew F. Smith. Additional links can be found in the show notes at thestorybehindpodcast.com. Follow on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StoryBehindPod, or subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. Thanks for listening.